What could turn an ordinary, unassuming man into a monster? Since his arrest in February, many around the world have wondered how a soft-spoken family man named Dennis Rader became the murderer who identified himself by 3 initials, BTK.
The rare glimpse inside the mind of a serial murderer.
Now I went back and strangled her again, and that finally killed her.
Losing Nancy has meant to me and my family. I lost a friend.
He takes advantage of people, he is disloyal, he is contemptful, and he takes advantage and manipulates everyone he runs into.
It was definitely a wake-up call for me as an 8-year-old to find out that that kind of evil existed.
I am BTK. Yeah, I'm the guy they're after, 100%.
Dennis Lynn Rader, born March 9, 1945, is an American serial killer and mass murderer who murdered 10 people in Sedgwick County, Kansas. Before all of that, he was anything other than a typical kid. He was born in Pittsburgh, Kansas. He was the oldest of 4 kids, and as a child, he appeared to be utterly normal and quite dull. He participated in church youth group activities. According to his confessions and several reports, he tortured animals as a child. He even admitted to hanging dogs and cats to death. By his own admissions, he said he developed several fantasies about bondage, control, and torture from an early age, while still in grade school. He also harbored sexual fetishes for women, in which he would later steal the underpants of his victims to later wear for himself. Around the age 15, he saved the life of a fellow Boy Scout. He graduated from a high school in Wichita at the age of 18. Then 3 years later, enlisted in the United States Air Force. He served a 4-year term with tours to Vietnam, Korea, Turkey, Greece, and Okinawa. Within his terms of service, his father, William Rader, died in Vietnam, serving in the Marine Corps. At the end of his time in the Air Force, his rank at discharge was sergeant. For a time, he worked in the meat department of Leakers, IGA, in Park City. Subsequently, he took a job at the Coleman factory and left in July 1973. His next job was an ADA security system. At this point, this is where Dennis Rader began his awful career as a serial killer. His last job before his arrest was a compliments officer at Park City. Aside from his killings, which will be discussed later on in the report, he attended Butler Community College in El Dorado, earning an associate's degree in electronics. He then enrolled at Wichita State University and graduated in 1979 with a bachelor's degree in Administration of Justice. On May 22, 1971, he married Paula Dentz and had 2 children with her. Dennis doesn't necessarily have a profound criminal history before the killings.
Terrorized, a string of gruesome deaths. What may have driven BTK to kill 10 people?
He was just an ordinary guy.
Dennis had killed 10 people and injured one who was admitted, and that made him very furious. In January 15, 1974, he married the Ortario family. This murder consisted of 4 individuals. Next was in April 4th, 1974, he stabbed a 21-year-old girl to death. March 17, 1977, he strangled a 24-year-old woman with a rope. December 8, 1977, he strangled a 25-year-old with a belt. April 27, 1985, he strangled a 53-year-old woman with his bare hands. September 16, 1986, he strangled a 28-year-old woman with a Leon Knight stocking. January 19, 1991, he strangled a 62-year-old woman with pantyhose. Most of his victims, as you can see, women, and those who couldn't necessarily fight him off. But why would he do all of this? Why would he commit or even plan murder? What made him into such a monster?
Dennis Rader's father was distant. His mother was the disciplinarian. When his mother spanked him, it caused both pain and pleasure.
Child abuse is a key factor in criminal activity like Dennis Rader. Alcohol and drug abuse is quite common when it comes to serial killers. Children who are exposed to alcohol, substance, and abuse in the womb may suffer from serious birth defects. Dennis from an early age developed a fetish for women underwear, in which he would wear and take in pictures of. Most serial killers start this deviant behavior from an early age, and like him, they typically start with relatively harmless peeping toms, or eventually graduate to breaking and entering, then later murder. If you were to watch the court case in which he was convicted of his murders, you would have seen that he took place into the autoerotic activities. He bound himself, tied himself, took pictures of himself in a hole bound up, etc. He took place through masturbation to taboo images, as well as people that were dying by his own hands. Dennis was a serial killer who fantasized about his victims. His victims were not anyone specific. It wasn't anyone who did harm in the past. It was strictly people that fantasized about and then became an obsession.
For over 30 years, 10 bodies. 3 initials which struck terror in the heartlands of America.
B stands for bind, T stands for torture, and K stands for kill.
How was serial killer Dennis Rader finally caught?
Dennis Rader, known as BTK, bind, torture, kill, could have never been caught. He stopped killing in 1991, and because he was so obsessed with the ego and the fame of BTK hitting the media, he decided to write letters to Cake Channel 10 News starting in 2004. If he would have never done that, he probably could have gotten away with it and no one would have ever known the true identity of BTK. It would have just evaporated into legend. However, sending these letters, which one contained a package, a manila envelope, that had a picture and stories of his killings in detail. Another one was a poem called "Oh Death to Nancy," and it was botched lyrics of an American folk song, "Oh Death." He used the return address Bill Thomas Kilman with the same initials. In May 2004, he decided that they should have a story about him, so he wrote the BTK story, gave fake ideas and word puzzles to Cake with some chapter suggestions for the title. Chapter 1 was "A Serial Killer is Born." All this ended up leading to the arrest of BTK in February 2005. He was so obsessed with having not killed for over a decade that he was planning to kill again. He even set a date, October 2004. He was arrested after that, so why that person never died, I personally don't even know. But he was stalking his next intended victim, and he was going to come back and kill people. BTK was going to strike again, but he screwed up. The one thing that he did that was wrong, ask if a floppy disk could be traced back. Instead of looking it up for himself, he asked if it could be traced back. Obviously, the police would say no. But when he sent that floppy disk, they found remnants of a deleted Microsoft Word document that Rader forgot to clear. And on that document contained the church, Christ Lutheran Church, and that the document was last marked and modified by Dennis. Simple internet search, Dennis Rader is the president of the city council at Christ Lutheran Church. So they drove to the church, and they knew that BTK drove a black Jeep Cherokee from one of the incidents at Home Depot. So once they found that they just needed to get hard evidence. Simple DNA test led to this hard evidence. And so the resurfacing of BTK and the potential killing again of BTK ended up getting him arrested and caught, and justice could finally be served. BTK got arrested from his own choice because of his big ego, and he didn't know when to quit. That is why he got arrested.
After 31 years of search and mystery, the 59-year-old Dennis Rader is confirmed to be the BTK killer. On Friday, 25th February 2005, the police stopped him at a traffic light near his home. Once placed under arrest during his first interview, Rader is almost unaware of the situation he's in. One of his concerns is his future jail accommodations. Quote, "Am I going to be placed in a special section of the jail, or am I going to be thrown in with a bunch of loonies?" End quote. Rader compares the good cop/bad cop routine they tried to the way he would make his victims acquiesce to his wishes. Confronted with the computer disk and the DNA, he says, quote, "There is no way I can weasel out of that or lie," end quote. Falling for the false camaraderie with which the police presented with him, he spends hours and hours confessing. During this, he seems genuinely upset that the police lied to him about the computer disk information. It will take him some time to realize that he has been played. It's discovered that when he was arrested, he had other projects targeted and was preparing to execute them. Police will never reveal the names of these nearly victims. His bail is set at $10 million. Dennis Rader makes his first court appearance via a video link from his cell phone on March 1st, 2005. In May, he pleads not guilty to the 10 murder charges. Two of the BTK killer victims filed lawsuits seeking damages from Mr. Rader. Their motive isn't monetary, but is intended to ensure that Rader can never profit from any media interviews. In June, Rader changes his plea to guilty. Dennis Rader appeared unusual amongst serial killer psychopaths, in pleading guilty and expressing remorse. He showed a degree of empathy and sympathy which is almost, by definition, missing in such mass murders. Quote, "I have a lot of remorse. I'm very sorry for them. It is something I wouldn't want to happen to my family." End quote. Of course, whatever he says he feels, and his calculating killings of projects shows his true character. It's probable that his apparent remorse is no less than an act whenever he dressed as a repairman or told his victims stories. All lies intended to achieve what he desired, and in reality doesn't accept responsibilities for his crimes. He blamed his split personality, which was what he considered a monster in his mind. On July 26, 2005, Rader's wife of more than 30 years ends the marriage, and the judge waives the unusual waiting period to grant an immediate divorce. She can take some small consolation, however, from the fact that if Rader had not been married, he would have been free to stalk and kill much more. August was the first time for relatives of his victims to confront him, but also reveals more gruesome details. Halfway through the month, he gives testimony about his first murders and an insight into his belief system. He says he believes the Otero family will serve him in the afterlife as slaves. He believes the same will happen to Shirley Relford. He also adds that he would have killed her daughter and the other children if the phone hadn't rung. Wichita Police Lieutenant Ken Landwehr said that the only thing that made Rader different from other serial killers was the long period of time between some of the killings. Apart from that, there was nothing really special about him. When family members of his victims called him a coward, Rader appears upset. When Rader delivered a 20-minute statement, he tearfully admitted his faults, thanked his supporters, and then compared his position with that of his victims. The judge then sentenced Rader to 175 years. He is currently in El Dorado Correctional Facility.
BTK's brazen belief that he is smarter than police and his need for attention may have led investigators directly to him. For serial killers like Dennis Rader, confessing is less about making amends and more about keeping control.
The greatest satisfaction I have in my life is the thought of him burning in hell. When you think about what that cockroach did to so many lives, can you ever exact enough punishment, enough pain to make up for that? No.
He's in jail. He's not going to hurt anyone else.
Got him! Got him!